So it's been a little while since I've done a tutorial on this product. It's currently on version 5.10. I think the last one I did was version 5.7. So there's been a few changes, adjustments, and improvements that I'm going to cover. And I'll do a full tutorial and overview as if you hadn't seen the product before, just in case you did just purchase the product for the first time. So overall, I'm going to run kind of left to right. There's some information on the password on the workbook. In frequently asked questions, there's some tutorials. One of them is how to use the password. So if you decide you want to unlock it, you can. I will make a note. You should never need to unlock the workbook in order to use it. Some people like change colors, formats, etc. You can do that, but the two colors you're going to see and use are the white and the beige. Everything else is protected for a reason. Again, if you want to unlock it, you can. But there's risk, and again there's a tutorial on how to do that. So we'll start with the pay period setup. You can set up to 3 different incomes, and how those play in the pay schedules I'll cover. But for now, we're just going to set up the one, and I'll probably bounce back and forth and show you some examples of different ones. Right now, I've got it set to bi-weekly. So it's a bi-weekly versus I've got a couple other options. So weekly, bi-weekly, and then other, which is custom, which we'll cover. Actually, I'll just do that now. So bi-weekly. So let's plug in the first date, and let's say it's Friday of last week, which I think was on the calendar. Hold on a second. I'll tell you what, we'll do Friday this week. It'll be easier. So 56, 7, 18. So we'll do 9/19. And what it's going to do is auto-populate all your pay dates, at least in this table. I'll explain how it works in the other tabs, but it'll just do to every other week. And if I were to change that to weekly, these dates will change and reflect weekly. And then, let's see, so if I go to other/custom, then you have to manually populate the dates. And it'll play into other tabs, and I'll explain how, but ultimately you're custom. So if it's the 1st and 15th, if you're a veteran or in the military, that's how you get paid. Been there, done that. Some people, if it's a specific type of income and it comes once a month, you can do that on the 1st of every month, or whatever the case is, that you can use it for that. And again, you can set up to 3. So we're going to change this back to, we're going to come, oops, there we go. We'll go change it back to bi-weekly. And then the bill setup, so we'll come back to this a little bit more because I'll show you kind of how some of the things may work. But so bills and expenses, this is kind of where you're going to, set up your currency for the workbook. I think there's 4, so USD, Euro, Pound, and Canadian dollar. These are fully integrated, right? So it's not just formatting and it is kind of just some formatting, but some people play a little trickery with they add extra columns, and it's not truly the actual formatting. So if I change the euro, it's actually going to change everything to euros. But most people are going to use USD, unless you're obviously out of the country. So we're going to go, we'll kind of go left to right. I'll cover the income thing. I won't bounce around too much, but we'll come back to the income. For right now, everything's set to income 1, and I'll show you how that works in the pay schedule tabs. For now, you're just going to list your bill, expenses, and descriptions, and you can have up to, so this table is your recurring bills, expenses, so you can list up to 60. And then you're going to list the due date of the month. Now, it's the actual day of the month. Now let's pretend, for instance, you said, hey, I want to pay my mortgage. I want to do a little bit every time I get paid. Well, then you could break up that as an example. I could name this mortgage and then say, okay, every pay period. So every time I get paid, which is in this case, we set it up to bi-weekly. Income 1 was bi-weekly. And then it's every time we get paid, and we're going to set this for, okay, $300 every time we get paid. And I'm going to leave that the way it is. You'll see that in the pay schedule. And so you can do those that way. And I think that's the only 2 options, either the day, or every pay period. And the every pay period is kind of a neat feature. If giving your kid an allowance of $30 a week and you want to budget that. If you get paid weekly and you want to budget for every week, then you can do it that way. So, and then you got total due and just whatever you're paying each time you pay it. And then you've got one-time bills or expenses. So the example I have in here, and again, everything in here that's pre-populated is just an example. You can edit it, take it out, etc., whatever. But it's just examples, and I do that to kind of help navigate the workbook. So the one-time bills, expenses, I've got an example in here is truck taxes. You're going to pay that on a date, not a day of the month, but you're going to pay that one time, sometime in the year. This is great for things like taxes, or hey, I need to budget for, let's say, we're going to make up a name. So Brad's birthday, right? His birthday is in, let's say it's 8/15, which was last month, but let's just say anyway, 8/15, and then let's say I want to budget $300 for that. Your son's birthday, whatever. So you can do that one-time expenses, and those are going to flow through to the pay schedule tabs, which I'll show. And again, all these you got the incomes are selected. So which income is responsible? And I'll kind of cover how this works and some other options you can do with this because I get questions. So from that, we'll go ahead and show the calendar because everything I just did, the pay period setup and the bill setup are what go into the calendar. So you'll notice all these are showing up here. Now, I've got calendar month is July. So you'll notice the bills are showing up to include truck taxes on July 31st, right? You see that? Now, if I go to August, now Brad's birthday is in, I said birthdaddy. Well, I misspelled that, didn't I? I didn't catch that. Not that it matters, but we'll fix it. But you're not showing any pay dates, but this is pay dates and bill calendar. And the reason it's not showing the pay dates right this second, so if you look at the legend down here, this is how each of the block will be filled out, each of the blocks. So pay date's going to be up top, and then you've got 3 recurring bills that'll show up, and at the bottom, if there is a one-time expense, it'll show up. So there's some limitations on how many things could show up in the calendar within each square, but it should be enough to cover most circumstances. But if you go back and look at the pay period, I set it up for the first pay date was September. So if I go to September, now I'm going to start to see my first pay date show up, right? And if I go to October, I should probably have 2 pay dates. Oh, look at there's 3 pay dates in October. And that's how that works. And this is ready to print. So if I show that, so if I go to File and Print, it's going to print the calendar. So it's formatted to just print the calendar section. And obviously it shows the month and whatnot. So if you print it out, you can hang it on your fridge, whatever you want to do. Okay, so that's that. So now we're going to get into the pay schedule tab. So remember, we went pay period setup, bill setup, you can print your calendar, and now you want to set up your bill schedule. And this looks busy, but it's because there's a lot of information in it. But don't focus on all the noise. It is busy, but just focus on up to like column J, right? So everything to the left. The rest of it is just repeat. It's just the same thing over and over again, but different pay periods. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to set up income 1, and then we're going to select our first pay period. So we're going to choose our first pay date, and all these options are going to be based on, so I just selected income 1, right? So if I change the income 2, you'll notice I don't have any options to select for pay dates because I didn't set up income 2. So this pay schedule in this case is going to directly reflect income 1. That's what I set it up for. And then my pay is 9/19, so that's my first pay date, so we're going to set it up for that one. And then average pay schedule take home. So not your actual salary, but your take home. So let's say every time you get paid, it's let's say $1,200. So the first thing you're going to see, so that $1,200 will auto flow through all your different pay periods. So if you look, your first pay date was 9/19, so 9/19 through 10/2, and this is all going to auto-populate. So with 9/19 through 10/2, and then 10/3 to 10/16, and this is all based on it's based on you selecting income 1, which is a biweekly pay period. So you'll notice there's some some things that populate over here. So it's showing that, hey, income 1 is biweekly, and then you've got US dollar selected for your currency, and this kind of flows into the sheet. So going top down, so if I look at this, I'm going to take this out. So you'll notice I'm green everywhere because based on the current bills that are in the sheet in your setup and then your pay periods, I've got more than enough income to cover all my bills. So we're going to change what that looks like. And you also, let's actually do this too. I got some other stuff in the workbook here. Okay, so the workbooks, the pay schedule is nothing inputted. Everything that's in the sheet is currently fully automated until we start using it. So I'm going to change this for 1 to, let's say, just to show you some difference. Let's say I show 500. Okay, that's a little bit too much. Let's go, well, yeah, it's probably close to threshold. We can do 600 and see if that works. There you go. So most are green, and then I've got 1, cash available, shows 35. So what that means is for all the bills scheduled for that pay period, I'm $35 short. So my pay, it's estimating, hey, you're going to get paid $600, and your cash available is going to be negative 35 after you pay all your bills. So you're upside down. Now, once you are into this pay period, this is all just projection, right? So once I'm in the pay period, I'm going to come in and update so I'm going to get paid, and I'm going to update my checking account. I'm going to say, okay, money came into my account, and I actually made a little more, so I made $650. All right, great. So now I'm going to be, after I pay my bills, I'm going to be positive 15. So now I'm going to show you how this works. So I'm in the pay period. I'm going to say, okay, look, okay, this is due. I'm going to go ahead and pay the $10. You'll notice that went up to 25. And the reason it went up is because you have to, it's like balancing your checking. That's why it calls balance your checking. So if I spent $10, then this number should technically be $640. So now my cash available is always 15. So if whatever this shows initially once you get paid and your checking account is updated, this number should never change unless you spend money on things outside of your bills and expenses, which you will. You'll buy groceries and you'll do other things. So you'll come in, after a couple of days and say, okay, I got more bills to pay, but my checking account's no longer $640, it's $580. I spent some money on groceries and other things that weren't previously already accounted for and listed. So now that I've done that, I still got this many bills left, and now I'm going to be negative 45. So now I'm upside down. So I'm going to show you some kind of neat options. So let's pretend, hey, you've got some fluff over here, and timing, it'll be late, but maybe it's okay if I don't advise paying your bills late. I'm not telling you to do that, but I am showing you the features in the tool that you can use to plan ahead. So pretend that you aren't already in this pay period, but you're kind of planning ahead, and you notice you're going to be red. I'll say it that way. Definitely not advising to pay your bills late. So if you're planning ahead, you say, hey, look, I know I'm going to be a little short here. So what I'll do is I'll move some things around. So this manual bill override column, that's what it's for. It's to override the automated number that populates based on the schedule and based on the bill. So if I come in on the manual bill override and say, okay, for this bill, I'm not going to pay anything this pay period, so it just jumped to a 0. And instead, I'm going to pay the 45 over here. So now I'm net 0. So I'm back in the green. But now I'm $45 less over here than I originally was because I added $45. So if I take that back out, 110, and you want this blank. See the blank, don't put zeros. You want it blank because if I plug a 0, it thinks it's a 0. So if I come in here and plug a 0, it actually won't change this because I didn't have anything due there anyway. But if I change and put a 0 here, it's going to override the 30. So make sure these are blank unless you want something in them. And that's essentially how it works. These will stay red, so this is a neat feature too. Let's say for the big $300, you get a bi-weekly, so you're getting paid every 2 weeks. So let's say you pay $150 the first week, and then you'll take $150 out. So okay, I'm down to $430. So I'm still negative 45 where I was, but I'm still tracking. So I'm showing, hey, I paid 150, but it's still showing red because it's not paid in full. So the moment that you pay in full, so let's say now I'm up to 350. All right, so I got to take another 200 out of here, and I'm minus 45. So I'm still negative 45. Well, anyway, we'll move that back to the way it was. And we'll take that. So that's essentially how that works. And then you got 6 pay periods in each schedule. So, and the reason I have 6 is it just makes it a little easier to kind of plan ahead. You see your flow, and then you're not creating a tab for every time you get paid, right? So you can create a tab, and then you're using it for 6 pay periods, right? And that might be 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever the number is. But it makes these tabs last a little longer, and then you can kind of see how things are going. So in terms of the income, so this is going to get kind of, I'd say neat, but not everybody uses all the features, and some people want to manage it a little different. But for instance, let's say pay schedule 1 is income 1, and then I want to pay schedule 2 to be income 2. But I'm just going to show you, we'll do it on income 1 just to show you. So if I go back to, let's say, the mortgage. So I want income 2 to own this. So I'll go to my bill setup. I'm going to look at mortgage and say, okay, maybe you got a different checking account, maybe it's the same, but however you want to do it, there's lots of ways. But let's just pretend that income 2, the second income in your household, is responsible for the mortgage. So I'm going to set that to income 2. So now if I go back to pay schedule 1, it flagged it as income 2. Now you can still see the $300. So everything is still showing, but it's flagged it red. And it will no longer populate in the income 1 anywhere. It's not due here. But if I go back, and so if I were to change this to income 2 as an example, now I got $300, and it's populating because it's set on every pay period. So you'll notice there's no pay dates in here, and normally it wouldn't populate at all, but because this is set to every pay period, the pay date is irrelevant, but those aren't set up for income 2. Otherwise I'd get some errors. So we'll change that back to income 1, but that's how that works. And that's also how the every pay period, which I think that was on there before, I didn't pay attention. Let's go back. So bill setup, I'll change that back to income 1, and we'll go back to that pay schedule tab. Yeah, so you'll notice these two, both of these. So some of these, you'll see how they're kind of recurring every other week or every other pay period, right? Because they're once a month, and if you're getting paid twice a month, go figure something like that. But these every pay period are literally going to occur every pay period. That's how it's set up to work. And then I'm not showing the one-time expenses because they were a little old. Let's go back to do that. So if I go to bill setup, let's change this to 9/30 and 10/15. Now we'll go back to pay schedule 1 and see that. So 9/19 to 10/2. So the one that was 9/30 is now showing up here. So the 150 for truck taxes, and 10/15 I bet is in here somewhere. It should be right here. Yep. So 300. So those are flowing through, and then see you're kind of net negative for sure now, right? Because of those bigger expenses. But that's what the red and the green are for, to kind of show you and help you plan ahead. And I think that's generally it on kind of how that works. There's multiple pay schedule tabs. You can take the template, make plenty of copies. You can use this forever. You can make another copy. You can use it, have one workbook a quarter. You can, continue to make tabs. I will note that eventually, so if I go back to the pay period setup, I've got 60 pay periods. So that's a lot, right? Especially if you got bi-weekly, that's like more than 2 years. So this workbook will technically it'll last longer than that. You can make copies or continue to make tabs and then come in here and update and change the dates. But generally speaking, I do make a lot of revisions and improvements. So if you get the workbook and then later see I've got an update and you want the update, shoot me a message on Etsy and I can send you an update. So chances are, I wouldn't say you'll probably be using this for 2 years. You'll probably be using an update sooner than that. I think that's generally it. I don't think I'm missing anything. Pay schedule. I will show that. So the custom is going to be a little different. The custom's a little trickier. So let's pretend this is now custom. I'm going to leave these dates in here. That's fine. So if I go to pay schedule, so you'll notice now income one. So this is no longer hidden up here. There's some inputs. So something's changed. So I'm going to go to 7/15. So that's the 7 or 7/1 for the first pay. Wow, first pay date. Can't talk. So 7/1. Now you'll see I get a flag here. So end date is less than start date. So check row 3 input. So 12/31 is an earlier date than 7/25. That's why it's giving me the error. And because these are custom, and I don't have this automated in, I've thought about doing, I just haven't yet. So this is kind of manual, but it's not complicated, right? So 7/1, and when does the pay period end is, let's say, because they were 1st and 15th of every month. So I'm going to change this to 7/14. This will auto-populate to 7/15, and then I'm just going to keep doing that. So 7/31, right? 8/1, this will be 8/14. 8/15 to 8/August 31, right? Yep. 9/1 to 9/14, and then 9/15 to 30 days in September. 9/30. Yeah, that's it. Now everything else works exactly the same. But when you do custom, you've got to set up your dates for your pay periods, and it's just a manual input. That's it. That's how that works. And you'll manually set these, but then your date selection is based on the pay period setup. And there is a way I can automate that to where these flow in they flow in by themselves, but I haven't done that yet. I need to update that. But always opportunity for improvements. So if you're using the file and you have questions or see something that looks funny, don't hesitate to send me a message. I will note that there's a lot of red flags everywhere. Those are built-in notes, and that's a pretty sloppy looking. It's too far, zoomed out too far. But if you hover over, you're going to see examples. I get questions and I try to answer those through built-in notes throughout the workbook, right? So you can hover over and they'll populate and show up. And all these are repetitive. They say the same thing, but at least like if you see pay and then hover over the next pay one, they all say the same thing. But just repeat notes. But there's, again, notes all the way throughout the workbook everywhere. And it kind of helps explain things. So that's it. You got any questions? Shoot us a message. Thanks for watching.